3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from three Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. Welcome to Season 3. Happy 2022. We have started a new year, a new season. I know that we have been making some videos for the Book of Boba Fett that kind of started the season before Season 3, but this is our official first. Exactly. Those don't count for 2022. This is the first video of 2022. And to start things off, we are not going to talk about Star Wars, maybe a little bit. Today will be our other nerd-related media stuff. And to do that, we have a wonderful guest. We have Catrina Dennis coming back to join us.
Hi.
Welcome, Catrina.
So Hi. Yeah, I'm so excited to be back, and I'm excited to be talking about Encanto. I love this film. So.
Oh yeah, it was one of those things that we were like, oh, what are we supposed to talk about to start the season? And it was like so many things. Like obviously we're a Star Wars centered podcast. It's just like we're already talking about Book of Boba Fett. We have like all those weekly episodes, and it's just like, well, what thing is kind of relevant to the triad and his, Hispanic representation and representation in general, which is a big topic for us. And what was a kind of beautiful movie. And it's just like, oh shit, right. It's not Spider-Man, it's Encanto. And there has been such a wonderful discourse, especially with everyone loving the shit out of we don't talk about Bruno. It's just like, hey, it's not only like a relevant topic for us, but it's kind of relevant on the social social media and the general landscape of film discussion right now. So kudos, Lin-Manuel. You did a good job on that one. But before we get started, let's Catrina, how's everything been going with you? We haven't talked to you in a while. How's 2022 been treating you? Welcome to the new year.
Yeah, thank you. Happy New Year to you both. Things have been really nice. I have a day job that keeps me nice and busy, and I've started on some really great new projects, and the year kicked off really, really well. I've been working on stuff I can't talk about until later this year, but other things that are in the works. My podcast, A Fight Club Far, Far Away, which is about fights and battles in Star Wars. That's coming back real soon, as well as PodroPascal, where we talk about PodroPascal's filmography. That's coming back as well. We're recording, I think, this week with Rachel and everyone. So super excited, just all around to get back to making cool stuff. So
yeah, the projects you can't talk about are the most exciting projects, aren't they? It's just like, oh,
all of them. So it's cool. So frustrating because it's like I want to talk about this thing, but I can't say a thing because I signed so many things.
So in a way, you're so Andrew Garfield right now.
Yeah, there's.
It's like so that's it. You're in Spider-Man: No Way Home.
I'm sorry if you guys haven't seen it. I'm in Spider-Man: No Way Home. I play Andrew Garfield as Spider. I provide
Holy
the voice.
Crap!
Yeah.
Plot twist.
Andrew Garfield. Yeah. It was just great. It was a wonderful.
That sounds better than what we got.
Yes, absolutely.
Sony and Disney,
someday.
Make this happen.
Make it happen.
Exactly. Just put it out there, tweet it into existence, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the new. You don't manifest things into existence. You tweet things into existence nowadays.
I've tweeted a lot of things at Star Wars, so I'm just saying,
the universe will, it will provide somehow because if it's on Twitter, it will have an impact of some kind.
Yep.
But speaking of Star Wars, I just got curious about this. Are you going to Star Wars celebration? You're in California. Are you going to a celebration this year?
All things panning out correctly, with this other pandemic, I'm hoping to go to Star Wars. Everything's in check, so
yes.
As long as we're not in so much of a panini, I'm there. I'm going to Star Wars night, which is super exciting.
I'll see you there then. I got my tickets in the mail.
I'm really excited.
I got that. I'm like, oh my God, it's real.
I know. I've never been to a Star Wars night, and I feel like this year would be a really cool year to do that. So yeah, I'm really hyped for all of that. And just to see everybody. I miss everyone.
Right. Exactly. See people again. But it's gonna be such a blast because last time I was at Disney, I've never been to Disneyland ever. Last time I was at Disney World, I was 11 years old, so that was over 20 years ago. So this will be like a holy crap experience for me. I hope I can emotionally handle it, because I don't think I'm ready. It's like Galaxy's Edge plus Disney plus Star Wars night plus Celebrate. It seems like a sensory overload. So
yeah,
embracing it.
I'm like emotionally preparing myself for it, right?
Yeah. It's like it may be too much. It may be too much.
Yeah,
can't handle it.
That's why you have your hotel room. You go back, you get some water, you breathe, take a nap,
cry a little bit,
cry a little bit. You know, like I don't know, man.
Okay.
I'm in my 30s now, so I'm not like rushing to a lot of events at Celebration. Like I prioritize. Like I'm like, okay, these are the 2 I got to make sure I'm at that day. This is like the lottery event that I got, whatever, which is definitely going to happen again. Watch out for that, everyone. And then it's like, and then I'm gonna nap.
Yeah, I thought the lottery was a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. Like I didn't.
Yeah, you know,
at the end of the
you
day,
win some, you lose some, but you know.
Yeah, like
but
that's
it's
the thing.
equitable.
Yeah, I've been going to Comic-Con and all these other like really big cons for so long that it's like I know that whatever happens in the big panels is going to be on YouTube really soon after. So the only ones I really want are like the special ones where it's like, you know, John Williams is going to be there. And I'm like, I really hope I get that one.
Yes,
like,
yes.
But otherwise it's like, oh, it'll be nice to be in the same room as like PodroPascal and stuff. That sounds cute. So
but hopefully these people that will be on the panels will also be either signing autographs or taking pictures, and then it's like, well, I didn't see them talk about it live. I'll be able to see it on YouTube, but then I can just take a picture with them and be right next to them. Or with a piece of plexiglass between us. But that's the new normal. But
exactly. Like I've always like found when I missed a panel, like something else cool happened. Like I missed the panel for the trailer reveal, I think, for Force Awakens at D23 that year. And I was sad because I was supposed to go, but like stuff happened and I wasn't able to go. So I was going through the hallway and I passed by the HP booth, and like the Drew Struzan poster for the Force Awakens had just been revealed at the panel. Like I was watching it on my phone, like moping around the hallway. And this person at the HP booth was like, hey, we're starting a line for the new Star Wars poster. Do you want to be the first person? Do you want to be our marker? And I was like, that yeah. And then like that's how that lives there now.
Oh Lord.
So yeah, so like I have like number 1 for that printing, which is super cool. And so, you know, I always look at things where I like, if I miss it, it's like, you know what, there's got to be a reason. There's something
it leads to something else.
Yeah.
And for context for people who don't know, Drew Struzan, who is a legendary movie poster artist, he practically designed every single poster that you love from the 80s and 90s. Legendary movie poster artist for Star Wars as well. He was retired, and somehow Lucasfilm, and that somehow is money, they got him to unretire for that one sheet for The Force Awakens. So that's an amazing piece of art that they got the master himself to do. So awesome. I'm very jealous.
Yeah, exactly.
See, it all happens for a reason. Yeah.
Exactly. The universe is working in your favor, folks.
Yes, you just have to, have to go with it and not go against it.
Exactly.
But it's kind of a good thing, I think, of the lottery system. It also takes away that stress of having to worry. Okay, I have to wake up 2 a.m. so I can get in line, outside the venue, so we can, camp, and like it's like, oh, you got your ticket.
No, there's no amount of pizza anyone can give me to want to camp out of anything. So I'm really down with the lottery.
And it's very, very. It was also like very ableist. Like it disregards who, like a lot of people, or even that have families that cannot camp out for just like the lottery days. Like it's more equitable.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
But moving from Star Wars Celebration a little bit, obviously our main topic is Encanto, and we'll get to that, but we'd be remiss if Star Wars Focus podcast does not talk about Star Wars. Let's talk a little bit about Book of Boba Fett. For everyone who knows or may not know, we're doing like our limited series of reviews for each of the episodes that come out. Up till now, we're on episode 4, and we've had a guest for each one. So like they're really fun conversations, with some extra spicy takes, because not all about fried all the time. We like to add a little bit of seasoning to everything, because what is Puerto Rican food if it's not very well seasoned? So we always like to add a little bit of that onto all of those episodes. So make sure to check them out to see what our thoughts are on all of the individual episodes. But Catrina, have you been following up with Book of Boba Fett? And if you have, what are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really, it's not every episode is a hit, but I'm really enjoying it so far. I think it's a really fun series. Like, I'm having a lot of fun actually watching it, and that's something I feel like is kind of missing from a lot of like dramatic TV shows. So yeah, it's like, it's cool. Like, it's, I love that Boba is a soft human being. It just makes people so mad. And I'm like, yes, make him more human. Yes, let him adopt all these children. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. He loves animals.
Yes. Mate, come on. Yes.
It's amazing. Like, I think one of like my tweets that like popped off was like from last year, where I was like, yeah, keep humanizing Boba Fett because it makes me like more powerful, so I can do my evil doing. And and Disney was just like, all right, let's go.
It's really odd, right? Like, to see like the reaction that some people have towards some of these characters, and not just some of these characters, just in general, right? Because I feel it's just like a fake outrage. It's just like there's nothing to complain about. It's like good storytelling. So it's like, okay, what are we gonna complain about? Okay, well, I imagined this being this way when I was 12 years old and I was smashing action figures together, and now I'm a 30-something grown-ass man, and it's not the way I thought about it when I was 13. So I'm gonna get angry about it. It's just like, really, is that where you choose to focus your energy instead of like having some nuance with yourself as well?
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah, I guess it's like, there's like character projection going on there in a way. Like, these guys want to see themselves. They want to see this like version of the Punisher they made up in their head, who like isn't even like the Punisher. And they're like, why isn't Boba, like that one tweet, why isn't Boba Fett like the Punisher? It's like, Boba Fett has never been like the Punisher. He literally, his entire history is about taking L's and then getting up and looking cool. Like, that's like, he takes the L, he's like, oh, and then he like gets up and he cleans up his armor and he keeps moving. Like, that's why I love Boba Fett, because he just like, he'll fail and keep getting up. And like that, if that is not a testament to his escaping the Sarlacc pit, both now in canon and like 30 times in the expanded universe, exactly. that's always been his character to me. And so like, it's so funny to like see these guys get so mad that he's taking L's. Like, every great Star Wars character has taken an L. Vader has taken so many L's. That one moment in A New Hope that constantly makes me laugh is when he's like, what? When like
that one is always very jarring all the time. What?
It's like so the funniest. And it's like, it's so, at the end, you really think about it, it's so Anakin Skywalker, because like he thinks he's the shit, and like he knows he has proven he's the shit many times, but like just to see him like take that L from like this 19-year-old idiot. Like,
right, absolutely.
So I'm fine with Boba, not having like the perfect run to like Daimyo. He has to hit some rocks along the way, or it's not going to be
like, and how is it compelling if it's just W's all the time, right? If he doesn't have any struggle, then like, okay, then there's nothing compelling about him. But again, and to your point about like Boba Fett just being like, the only time he won that we saw him in the movies was fine. Empire Strikes Back. He got Han Solo. He got him. But then the last time we ever see him, he's just falling into a butthole in the sand because a blind man threw him in there, and that's it. So it's just everyone's power fantasy is based on the last time we saw Boba Fett just falling like an idiot into the sand hole. So it's just like, okay, let's temper our expectations too, and like not pretend that things aren't the things that they aren't. But
you know what? Embrace being your expectations being broken. That's the beauty of life as well. Like,
especially when they're broken in a good and nuanced way, right? It makes you think about the things that you thought were some way and that they could be somehow better. But enough about Boba Fett, that loser. You want to hear more about him? Just tune in on Fridays when we have our episodes about him. But let's move into something that's a little more fun. People are talking about Spider-Man all the time, but over here, it's just like Spider-Man doesn't have enough seasoning. And I think one of the most important things that have happened lately in the movie landscape is the film Encanto, which it's only Disney, it's not Disney Pixar. It looks, somehow now I feel like some Disney films are looking too much like Pixar and the other way around. So it kind of gets, you have to make sure to make sure that which one's which.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is just a Disney animation film. And what a wonderful film. It's, sometimes I think that we have, particularly me, I don't know about you guys, please chime in on this to see if you feel the same way, with a corporation like Disney, when there's like films like this that are about, representation. It's easy to get cynical sometimes. We have the corporate, machine just being like pumping that out because that's what consumers want now, and in a superficial kind of way. But then when you see the movie and it hits, it's a really impactful thing. And I think the movie has done a really good job at, like, obviously it's Colombian representation, but it kind of touches on a lot of other Hispanic tropes and issues that like kind of affect all of us, from Puerto Rico to Chile, Venezuela, and Colombia, obviously, that kind of resonates and hits a chord with everything. So it was a very beautiful film that I didn't expect. I mean, I expected it to be good, but I didn't expect it to, to have that, pull on that heartstring that kind of makes you like, oh, damn it, I really like it. So what were your first initial reactions? Catrina, you're a guest, so why don't we start with you? I know based on Twitter that you like the film. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Oh yeah, just a little.
Just a little bit, right?
Sort of like the film a little bit. I don't know how I keep finding myself tweeting about it, because it's like I just think about it like all the time. But my first viewing of Encanto was I was very, very lucky to be invited by my dear friend Goldie Chan to the Producers Guild screening of this movie, where there were like 12 people and we were all spaced out, and the theater was like huge, and it was nice to actually get to see this in the theater first. And I'm really thankful, because I know like a lot of people, like, because of COVID, weren't able to go and had to experience it at home. And like, this movie is just as beautiful at home, folks. Like, I'm not one of those movie snobs who's like, oh, you have to see it in a theater, or you can't appreciate it. I think you can appreciate film in any way you watch it, in any way you can. But it was so nice to see this like rich, like Latino film on the screen, just like playing out in front of me, where I could notice all these little details that just like reminded me of my family, and like the little things about casita. Like my grandparents had a house that was so much, they were like, it's like a townhouse version of that in Miami, with like the terracotta like roofing, and like the different colors on their house. And it was just like, it was so special to me to get to see that. And then the fact that like the every single one of those songs like hit in ways that I didn't expect them to. Like I was crying throughout the whole screening, more than the children who were like across the row from us. Like I was so glad it was dark and they couldn't see me. Like, falling. Yeah, it just like it touches on so many things that like you don't even really think about until you see it like right in front of you, and see like, wait, that's my family. That's a quirk of ours that like I don't really see in media so much. Like I think there's a great tweet rolling around that I noticed this when I was watching as well, but like it's about how like Mirabel's face moves when she's trying to like indicate the gift to Antonio, and she like purses her lips. And it's like, oh, that's like a directional, that's like a thing that we do, my family does, that like you don't really
say what with our nose, and just crunch up our thing.
Like just like little things like that they do, that like you can tell, because there was a consultant on a culture consultant on this movie, and teams and things like that, so you can tell that like all of that went from like the producers to the animators. And I really appreciate that a lot about this movie.
Well, what do you think? I know that you were, when we were talking about what movie to start the season with, like you didn't hesitate. You were like, boom, Encanto. So
Encanto.
clearly you also liked it a little bit. So what were your thoughts there?
Well, first I'm like Catrina, like the movie just hits in so many emotional levels, but in ways that it brings and understands what is the concept of family and why it is so important as part of you know, our Hispanic, like it's a cultural, like you don't see it as much like in Hollywood, because that's not part of the culture that Hollywood usually presents. So seeing it in a movie and like sort of like I love the all like the pictures of like the little like kids that are like, oh, look at me, like I can see myself in a movie finally. And you see like all this like even from the way the curls of the hairs, the way the family looks, like you can relate in so many levels, because it's almost like that's I think that's the quintessence of like Latinos. It's like Latin Americanos. It's like it is more a melting pot than even what the US claims to be. It is like every culture that has come has been embraced in some way, and then even like a thing like in like a food, I'm like thinking of like arroz chino, like, which is like
right Puerto Rican,
like
arroz chino is the best one. Sorry.
It's the combination, the fusion, the whole there's so much nuance, but there's also a lot of like baggage, and like there's also a lot of like pain and suffering that comes with that. And the movie seamlessly presents all of those elements, and the way it resolves, and like how you bridge, you know, the traditional values and the way of going forward. It's such a beautiful story, and I still cry every time, and when I hear the songs, I just keep listening. They're just so beautiful. It's great. The visuals are amazing. Everything is like it's a great, like, you laugh, you cry, you just enjoy the whole movie every time. So
it's interesting what you were saying though about like how they chose to present all the family members and the townspeople as well, because it's something that's I don't know if you guys have run into it stateside, but something that I've run into sometimes when I was in grad school down in here in Illinois or even in Chicago. People, you know, when you present yourself as Puerto Rican, sometimes they're like, oh, well, you don't look Puerto Rican, or you present someone else as Puerto Rican, they're like, oh, but they don't look like you. So, you know, it's just like, well, because Puerto Ricans or Hispanics don't look like one thing. We're not, you know, some aren't white presenting, some not everyone is Afro-Caribbean. It's just like like Mo was saying, everyone's like a melting pot. And I feel like that's obviously the reality. And I feel sometimes films and animated films kind of don't represent that richness. They kind of have like that, well, brown people, boom. It's a, you know, they're a monolith. And like, no, there's it's a tapestry, right? There's a richness to all the peoples that, you know, that live in all of our different countries, you know, down south from the border. So I thought that was one of the beautiful things that Encanto did. It's just like, you know, all of them, you know, represented beautifully and living together was such a kind of breath of fresh air, right? Because you're like, oh yeah, that's how it is.
That's how it is.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not all living as happily together as they show in Encanto, because, you know, reality sometimes is a little more complicated. But, you know, it's you know, it's something that's moving in the right direction. And another thing that I thought was really cool about the film, though, is its kind of lack of a villain. You know, a lot of, you know, Disney films obviously have like the villain that the protagonist has to like go up against. And I felt that it was interesting that, you know, we're maybe 10, 20 minutes before the end of the film, there isn't a villain or an antagonist. And it's really interesting, right? That what Mirabella has to kind of stand up against isn't like an outside force. It's an interior force. It's like she has to like contend with the pressures of family and expectation and like all these ways that everyone's been dealing with, and kind of deal with like all these generational things that are imposed upon her, and kind of that's the cycle that she has to break to like start having like healthy relationships instead of relationships based on expectations. That's what makes kind of the resolution of the movie so cathartic in a way, especially with, I mean, I've been posting on Twitter about it, but with that song Dos Oruguitas, holy crap, everyone's talking about, like, we don't talk about Bruno, but where it's at is Dos Oruguitas. That song is just so cathartic. And the symbolism, right, with that song is so beautiful, because obviously he's talking about a butterfly, and what better symbol for transformation than a butterfly, right? You know, the oh my God, I forgot the word. The
caterpillar.
Thank you. Like, thank you, Jesus Christ. I was gonna say worm, and I was like, that's not it. The caterpillar, you know, turns into the chrysalis and then to the butterfly. It's pretty straightforward, but you know, it's still a metaphor for transformation, and that's what the family was going through, right? It's like the expectations borne down by the fear that Abuela had, that of how she thought she had to maintain the unity of the family, and then Mirabel comes, you know, they're the same character in a sense, coming to unify the family from different perspectives, because Abuela was doing it. She was keeping the family together, a matriarch, but she was doing it out of fear. And it's like, this is how I have to protect them because of what happened to me. And Mirabel's like, no, I have to keep the family together, but by setting them free, because we don't have to, you know, live in these this fearsome way, right? That we have to fulfill these duties to make you happy. So it's kind of a beautiful way to do it. Plus, for me, anytime that I see a movie where a parent figure apologizes to a kid, boom, I cry like a little kid. I love it, and I'm like, the perfect movie. So what did you guys think about that interaction of, you know, Abuela and Mirabel, and then also the lack of a villain? We could start with you, Catrina.
Oh, yeah. I honestly, I thought I agree with everything you just said there. Like, it's you don't see generational healing as much in media these days. Like, there are so many. I feel like there are so many stories about families that like they like butt heads, and like that's the central idea of like the family's like drama, and like you never really see like you said, adults apologizing to children, and like families coming together after like they've experienced like a trauma and like fixing it. And I think like that, especially that ending sequence where they rebuild their broken house, you know, and the community that they help, that loves them, comes back and helps them as well. Like that played so deeply into like my experiences and like my upbringing, and like I loved seeing that on screen, you know, like, and I think it like it's even in a way a little defiant of like the individualism of like, you know, popular culture right now, you know, like you don't see that kind of thing happening in such positive ways. So like, yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see how these like connections between like Mirabel and Abuela like changed so much. And I love that you brought up the butterfly, because that's like central imagery throughout the movie. Like when the candle dissipates and the butterfly like fades away, that's when everything really kind of breaks. And like in Bruno's vision, that butterfly on like the leaf comes back when Mirabel and Abuela like heal their relationship. So like I loved like that way, that the way that tied so deeply into the story, because like I feel like throughout like Latin culture, like the mariposa, the butterfly is like it's such a huge symbol in like so many different ways. My abuelo has like this novel manuscript that like that is a central theme in his story, which is it like that's why it played so differently to me. And so yeah, I thought it was great. Like it was so different and radical in so many ways that like you don't see today, especially in like Disney movies, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. And just like that, like you were saying, like the butterfly, it's such a beautiful symbol in so many ways. And we tend to also like, and that's part of the butterfly is the caterpillar. Like that is the, you know, the whole process of like learning and understanding, because both that like they're both the same. They don't have power per se, but they were the ones that keep the miracle, and that is their power. Like
Exactly.
it's the component of, you know, an understanding what is needed at that moment, and both are born, like both of the miracles are both born out of like love at the, like one, the grandmother's one, you know, she has to protect her children, she has to protect the village, and that act of love, of sacrifice from their abuelo, it's like what makes the first miracle. But then
the power of love.
miracle, the power of love, but then love is not enough, and that's not a bad thing. It means that you have to evolve with it, you have to grow with it, and that's what I learned at the end, that just because, oh, I had this idea of that, you know, the love I created, you know, it was important at the moment. She had to raise walls, she had to raise mountains to protect, but now that love is open, so how do you deal with it, how do you evolve with it? And that's where you see that's why it's important, like that story of vulnerability, like that's the part of like the pupa, you destroy yourself, you become vulnerable. Like all of the children, like they had so much expectations, but they all had to lose their power, they all had to, and then to make the house, like I wasn't in Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria hit, but my parents were telling me like that's what you saw, like people just, you know, everybody, you know, was helping everybody just building their houses back, like taking that the tree that fell and broke the house and building it together, and that whole sense, seeing it there, like it brings so much power to that essence of community that we've lost. And I feel like, especially now in times of like, we feel like so isolated, that we need this type of stories that they heal, like healing the wound within. There's no enemy, like we still suffer, like we all need therapy, we all like have to, but it's not like in the movies, like, oh, it's because of this evil thing or because of that. No, it's because there are so many expectations and realities of our society or culture where we came up to be, that we don't know how to deal with them. But it's through that power of like understanding, love, and just communicating. I think this movie was very, like, the songs were all about communicating between each other. You know, that it's like there's explaining, there's like, oh, this is why we don't do things, there's like there's a history to everything. And I think that's where the value of like learning also your family's history, how they went through their own like how they solved their own dilemmas and issues, and how you can apply it in the future and evolve from it. That's what the movie showed, and that's why it's so breathtaking in so many ways.
And it's interesting because one thing you both were mentioning, it's about the movie presents this idea, right, of like the individual and like breaking away from expected roles that a family expects from you. And I think the cool thing about like how this movie starts framing it is that, unlike, you know, some American families or American values or libertarians or, you know, whatever philosophy you want to think about here stateside of like individualism, the movie presents kind of a different perspective on it, right? It's like you can be the individual, right? You can be who you want to be. That doesn't mean that you can't come back and like give back and be part of your family and help, but in your own way. And it's like it's, you know, it's not either or. You don't have to like set out on your own path and turn your back on everything else. And you don't also, and on the other side, you also don't have to stay locked into a system that you don't believe in. You can kind of find that middle ground of like, you know, helping your system, your family, and then also doing the things you want to do in your own way, which is, you know, that was what Bruno would have liked to do, but then felt that he couldn't do it. So he kind of went into self-imposed exile. But then obviously the movie kind of finds a catharsis where everyone through song, right, express that they all feel that they're weighted down by their gifts, their dons, right, as we say in Spanish. And like, 'cause it feels like the gifts are something that you have to have put in service of abuela or the family. And it's like, no, you can use the gifts as you want to use them because they're your gifts. So like you can explore them in the ways that you want to explore them, but you can also kind of give back in your own way. I think that was kind of the beautiful thing about it. And the really smart thing of using the gifts as an example, because, you know, gifts in Spanish are dons, and like all families talk about el don que Dios te dio, like the gift God gave you for, you know, and there's always an expectation that like Hispanic family have on kids. And there's a path, right, that I think that most, if not all, Hispanic families have. It's like, oh, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna go to college, you're gonna do this, so there's, or you're gonna date this type of person. It's like there's a lot of like weight and expectation from families in Hispanic cultures, and I think that it was really smart to frame it through magic, and like, no, your magic is to help and all these things. And it's like, oh well, that's cool, because if you look at all the magic gifts that all the characters have, at least to me, they're all like tropes that most people in everyone's families have. Like, yeah, you have the strong person that might not be just physically strong, but has to be emotionally strong to like help everybody. Obviously, the mom's gift, healing through food. I mean, everyone's mom heals through food. Come on, it's like everyone thinks that their mom's cooking is, you know, is comfort food. And if you're having a bad day, it makes you feel better. So like all these gifts were like really like the gossip, you know, gossip gift of hearing everyone has that family member. So it was really, really fun to kind of see like all those gifts be things that are things that everyone's families have. So does anyone have thoughts about that, how gifts are explored in the film and how that, you know, translates to cultures?
Yeah, I mean, I am the eldest daughter of first generation immigrant family, and man, you never expect to cry while Luisa is like flying around on her little unicorn donkeys, but like I'm just like in tears every time I listen to Surface Pressure. It's such a dead on, like I genuinely felt like not only seen, but like someone put a flashlight in my face and was like, that's you. You don't have to do so much. it's and it feels weird because it's like it's almost an unspoken expectation, you know, in families like this. Like nobody's ever gonna say like you have to do this. Sometimes they will, like, you know, I'll get to it in like a second, but like, you know, Antonio is made to promise something when he's 5 years old. Like
right?
It's like
it's a baptism, right? Too, in a way. That's
yeah.
It's like the gift ceremonies, like when you get baptized, and like in Catholic culture, like you're making a promise to follow this thing, and it's like, yeah, if you abstract it away from the religious, baptism is, you know, not just a religious promise; it's a family promise too. It's like you're promising to follow the steps that all of us have been following. So I think that I saw it that way, right? It's a baptism, and you're being indoctrinated in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's a really smart way to look at it. Like there's all the glitz and glam of like the event and stuff, the preparation. Like maybe you get to go in a tub and get dunked. Like it's pretty depending on where you're getting baptized, like and when you're getting baptized. Like there are things that are like cool and fun about it in a weird way to a 5-year-old, but it's also like, you know, she says like you promise to like use your gift for our community to like make this a better place. And it's like, that's a lot to ask a 5-year-old boy to say yes to just so he can have a room.
Exactly.
That's what he's there for. He's there for the room.
I just want a room.
Yeah, so it was a lot to like it, not like a lot to handle or anything while I'm watching the movie, but it was just like I felt seen in so many ways, and that was just like a huge way. Like even now, like I've, you know, my family and I, we talk a lot, we communicate a lot. Like my parents know that I'm like non-binary and that I'm queer. And so I've been really lucky in that, in especially that aspect of my family. But like, you know, it put a spotlight on the things that we don't talk about, where it's like, you know, I'm the eldest, I was given all these tools to like, you're going to be successful. Oh, you want to be a paleontologist? Here's everything you need to like learn how to do that. Like, now that I've like provided this for you, like, here's this unspoken expectation that like, you know, you're going to be this and this and this and this. And like, you know, it's only been really recently where I've like been able to talk to them about like what I really want to do and like the art I want to make. And thankfully, we talked about this a little before the show, but thankfully, because I come from a family of artists, that was also an easier conversation that I'm sure a lot of people have had. So it's, you know, it takes a long time to remove that armor and that weight from yourself when you're in these kinds of positions, you know? So yeah, it's okay. I identify.
It's heavy.
Yeah, it hit hard.
Oh yeah. That was also the song that just also first, you know, in line. And this whole like it's subtle because it's almost like, oh, like you have to help there's this expectation to help your siblings, to be there for them in every step of the way. And it's not something you don't want to do, because you actually also want to be there for them. But it's like it grows on you. It's like, well, who can carry? It's like, well, who helps me then? In a way, it eventually becomes, and all that weight and all that, like, it just makes you like crumble. Like, but then you know, it's still like hold it on together, because that's what it was.
You're supposed to,
that's how you.
Yeah.
Well, but that's how you already have those skills. Like, it's like, you know, you already built them, so you know, might as well just also like be crumble and be open, but also like, hey, I can also help you. Like, I already have it. Like, it's beautiful. I think that's why it's such a good storytelling, because it goes beyond. It actually talks about like what people actually feel and experience on those familiar relationships, like.
And the fear of not feeling comfortable to speak about the things you actually feel. I think it's like the most important lesson right here. It's just like just being able to be open about listening, right? Which I think it's a lot of problems that's why I love parents apologizing. It's just like, hey, that's something that we need more of, not just in films, but in, you know, that's a thing that I think parents need to learn from films too. It's like, not kids aren't the only ones that are supposed to learn from these films. Parents too are supposed to like take things from them. And I think that a lot of you know, parents don't internalize that they have to be vulnerable to their kids too. Yeah, they have to be like a source of strength for them, and you know, and a north for them to grow up and mature and be good people. But you know, parents aren't perfect. No parent is perfect. There'll be times when they mess up, and it's important for them to have that vulnerability and that honesty for the kids to be like, hey, you know, I messed up. I'm sorry. I didn't do this right by you, and you know, I'm sorry. Let's figure it out together again. And I think this is something very valuable that the movie does, and especially framing it with how everyone feels, right? Because we don't just see it from Mirabel's perspective. We see it from all of her siblings' perspectives, like from her aunt's perspective, from Bruno's perspective. And then the catalyst right at the end that kind of explodes the transformation, right? With the butterfly and Dos Oruguitas, hashtag should be nominated for an Oscar, not Bruno. It's the abuela's perspective, right?
Nominate them all.
If only they could. But and then you kind of then see the perspective, right, from everyone's, where everyone is afraid of something, and then everyone just needed the honesty for themselves to acknowledge that they're afraid, and then to communicate that to someone else. That, you know, mutual understanding, man, that's the name of the game. And you know, I feel like more movies need to be kind of dishonest. Well, dishonest, not dishonest. I said it quick, sometimes it sounds like the wrong word. But I really appreciate it. So another movie that came out though fairly recently. I mean, what is time in times of COVID? I don't know what time is anymore. That kind of dealt with some similar topics. Was Coco, Disney and Pixar, completely different from Disney Animation Studios. which obviously dealt with a Mexican family and their journey through, acceptance to an extent. Also had like a cathartic song there at the end with "Remember Me." There's a lot of parallels I feel with between those two movies. Katrina, what did you think about that, especially since like they came out so quote unquote, not that close to each other, but in less than 10 years, right? We get like these two Hispanic focused movies that kind of deal with family and representation.
Yeah. Well, I think, well, first and foremost, I hope that Encanto also gets the Hollywood Bowl treatment, because holy crap, I would love to see those songs performed live, as they were with Encanto, which was a beautiful show. I think you can watch it on Disney Plus. So don't quote me, but I swear you can watch it somewhere. I honestly, I think that like the biggest similarity is are Miguel and Mirabel being that like vehicle to heal that trauma that their family experienced. Like Miguel was that person who connected like his grandfather and father and grandmother, etc., like all together, because he was that relatable touch point, because he wanted to fulfill that similar dream. And so in Mirabel, you also kind of see that, like you said earlier, she and Abuela want the same thing. They want the family to thrive, and it's just that their viewpoints are different, and Mirabel's is the right one.
Yes.
And so it's it's really, it's cool. Like I think that for me especially, like as a Latin American person, like just having these characters serve as POV characters for me, the audience, has been such a radically different thing, that like for once these experiences are so similar to me in ways that like I don't expect that like the broader audiences don't experience, but me and like my community know this and know this language and know these mannerisms and these types of traumas. So I think that's the connector. Like these characters that you're put in the shoes of are similar because they're vehicles for healing.
Well, did you get a chance had you seen Coco?
Oh yeah, plenty of times.
Plenty of yeah, that's the thing. It's just like I remember the first time I saw Coco, I was like, okay, I did not expect to hit. I expect that scene with a great grandma with Abuela Coco, and like he starts singing the song, and then she starts reacting. I was like, okay, here we go. Niagara Falls, man.
Here we go. Let the waterworks begin.
Yeah, the minute I saw like Abuela Coco just turn around, I was like, done. And I was re-listening to it this morning because I'm like, okay, we're gonna talk about Encanto. So let me listen to some of the songs again. And I remember Coco. I'm like, let me rewatch the clip. And I rewatched the clip and I was like, god damn it. I'm gonna start my morning just crying here.
Hey, that's always a good way. That's a good way to start any morning. Like,
yeah, a good cry is important.
Good cry is very important. Yes, absolutely.
Mo, what did you think about Coco, especially when compared to Encanto?
I have to say, on a very personal level, Encanto touched way more like heartstrings than Coco did. Coco did all the treatment that but I think Encanto was the depth in which Encanto dealt with the psyche of so many different characters, but at the same time driving such a compelling story was it's in that way Coco is a little bit more linear. You can expect how the resolution is going to end, but they both have the whole aspect of like they revolve around the importance of both being an individual and being a part of family, and how what's that delicate dance between like how can I both remain my individuality and be part of this family and be able to communicate and be loved by them and be accepted by them, because I think that's what Encanto, it's like it's the fear of not being accepted by your family, which is the ones you expect, and ultimately in a healthy and good relationship, those are the ones that no matter what will stick with you. I mean, there are exceptions, and there are a lot of families that are not healthy, and there's a lot of like conflict, and but you know, it's the idea that that's where the expectation comes from, that you know, if no one else, your family is the one that should be there for you. But there's always the fear that you will lose them, because it does happen. And the way Encanto dealt with it was, I think, more magical to, and also it's like very, Encanto is very, it's almost like realismo mágico Encanto in a way. I think Coco, I love Coco in like the mythical way. I love all the Catrinas, and I love all the skulls and all the underworld and this whole aspect. But the way Encanto deals with what is love, what is family, what is the self-love, because that self-acceptance of who you are, because that is the central aspect to it. If you don't find self-love, you can't really love somebody else, or you can't really accept love from somebody else, because you will always be tainted by you're not loving yourself. And I think Encanto went above and beyond with that to show each character how they can self-love themselves by their own uniqueness. And that's where but I don't want to compare them, because they are different stories. I love them both. Like but that's why Encanto hit on so many different levels for me. So
yeah, I think definitely Encanto has been a, not only like a beautiful movie and a good story, but something that's kind of transcended just good storytelling, because it just means something. And it kind of, I think most of the people that I've seen online that are, you know, joining the Encanto discourse, they have all been touched by it in a special way, and all have kind of seen that it's not, you know, it's not just a kids movie. It's something special that, you know, a lot of people have resonated with, and that we definitely should see more of. I was kind of going through the production list to kind of see the behind the scenes people that were involved in making the movie. And I was happy to see that most of the people that were involved in the writing of it were, you know, of Hispanic descent, or, you know, yes, completely Hispanic, right? The only thing that I was kind of a little disappointed by, and not too much though, was kind of see that the directors weren't, you know, necessarily, you know, POCs, which, you know, they directed, if I'm not mistaken, Moana before this, and they've directed a couple of other solid Disney movies. So they've been doing a good job. But that's kind of like the only thing that I feel is kind of lacking in some of these movies that I think kind of need to change going forward. And it's not to take away the progress that we've made, because I think Encanto is a really good progressive movie for representation and inclusion. Because as what you were saying, Catrina, I have like a consultant for some of these things of like how to incorporate these cultures appropriately. They had Lin-Manuel's Puerto Rican, so I don't know if he's the best example to having of who to bring in to like make cultural music. But you know, people behind the scenes, I think it's also important to have our people and the cultures that are represented tell their stories, and not, you know, not have them be proxies to someone else that are making them. I think that's something that's missing. What do you think about that? Or is that something that is not too important at this time? What do you think about it, Catrina?
Yeah, I fully agree. Like the more we see these movies come out, I'm sorry, there's like a dog that has so much to say in the background.
He's like, I loved it too.
I also loved Encanto. Yeah, like I am glad to see like that. One of the things I did like about this was that I, you know, as the credits rolled, I like noticed a lot of names that like, I know that a lot of the right people were hired for this. And I hope that eventually, especially at Disney Animation, where they have access to so many like varied backgrounds in their artists, like we've seen a lot of artists who worked on Encanto, like posting their clips and things like that they worked on. So I hope that like the more the better, but I hope eventually we do see like, like Colombian directors in Disney films. We do see like all these people that, are, it would just be great to see more Disney films go to non-white men when I see like awards go out during award season,
right.
like I forgot what his name, Pete Docter, there we go, like has directed like a bunch of Disney films, but like, it's time to roll forward. Let's open the door for someone else. I would love to hear more stories. I mean, I know one of the writers of this film is, I think, either Colombian or certainly Latinx, and so like that I think is part of why this, like, everything is conveyed so clearly to us, and I think that example in itself is a reason why we should be hiring more like diverse talent, more talent from the places that we want to tell stories from. And so the baby steps. I remember back in Frozen, they like the most they really did with like working with an actual indigenous people in their canon was like they like called like this indigenous tribe in like Sweden or something, where the myth is from, and like talk to them, and that was it. And it was like nobody on staff.
One
and then
team
suddenly
strong.
like Elsa and Anna were like part indigenous, like out of nowhere. that was, those parts of that movie were just like, well, that doesn't sound right, you guys. Okay.
Who did you hire? Who did you talk to again?
Sounds a little weird to me, but that's okay.
Just make the mix. That's fine. That'll fixes everything.
Like, upon one of my very recent watches of Encanto, I started thinking about like Chilean mythology. Down in Chiloé, there's so much lore. Like there are these like twin sea serpents, there's the Mila Lobo, and this like party ship that like dead sailors get carried to, and they get to like party for the rest of their lives, because that's how Latin
that's how you go. That's
where you go when you die. You party, you have a great time. That's how we do it. Don't know how everyone else has this dark view, but whatever. And I just like started doodling out like what would a Disney film be like if like I had that power to like hire people from that area, because like I know the lore, and like my family several generations back is there, but I'm not going to claim that heritage. And so like I did my concepts, and I was like, oh, it'd be so cool if I could hire everybody from that region to like make it happen.
Make it happen.
Yeah, it'd just be dope. Like, and so I feel like that's like one of the lessons that like I think Disney is learning, is like when they find these cool myths and stories in like their development and research department, they're actually taking it to people from those cultures to tell those stories, Oh, yeah.
I think we definitely need to see more of that, and kind of to start, wrapping up into like the final segment, right, of the episode. It's like, it's obviously Star Wars, so we're going to do like a lessons applied type of thing, and it's going to start transitioning into that. I think one of the things that we see of how talking to groups that are unrepresented or misrepresented is important is Book of Boba Fett, right? There, it's a step in the right direction, even though it took a massive step in the wrong direction. But with the representation of Tuscans, I think, especially with episode 2, that episode was just like a smorgasbord of good decisions of like what to do when you're bringing in a group. I mean, obviously, in everything in Star Wars is a stand-in for something. It's not like in Encanto, it's like Colombians. Here, obviously, Tuscans are fictional, but it's native tribes of North America, probably, right? It's the main inspiration here. But to have them presented in a positive light, in a constructive way that's like representative of how these groups would not be represented usually, because if you look at them in like traditional Westerns and whatnot, indigenous people would obviously be would usually be the the antagonist or foil, or and then we have to kill them. It's like cowboy versus Indians, and the Indians are the bad guys. And it's like, well, no, they're not Indians. They're Native Americans, and they're not bad guys. They're just people who have been displaced from their lands and are trying to defend their ancestral homes by white invaders. Let's contextualize things. And once you put things in those perspectives and start making that translated into film, it makes an impact, and it makes for better storytelling anyway. Those Tuscans weren't interesting when they were just screaming people, with the gaffy sticks. Now they're interesting because now they're people with backstories, with cultures. So that's why it's a little upsetting to see. And then in chapter 3, them just be wiped out by a tribe of nobodies. Even though I do think there's going to be a twist to that, but we'll have to wait and see. But they still killed them. They still slaughtered them after an episode of wondrous cultural uplifting. But based on that, what Star Wars did or is doing in very, very, very small steps, in contrast to Marvel or Disney animated films. What lessons, Catrina, would you say that Lucasfilm needs to learn from Encanto?
I think specifically, I definitely think that that point I said earlier was like, it's vital to like what the stories that you want to tell. Like if you want to continue with, so Star Wars has this aesthetic often that borrows from like Japanese culture and Asian American or Asian cultures, and I just constantly I want to see costume designers brought on who can actually like authentically translate their culture to Star Wars in the way that George Lucas wanted that to happen. Like it's such a huge influence on him, and to see it through the perspectives of like people who are actually from those cultures that he wants to apply into Star Wars, it would be, I think it would not only like kind of help heal the the poor work that has been done in the past, but it also just like opens up the story and makes it much better. Like what we saw with Visions was like transformative. I loved seeing Star Wars in anime. Is really important to me because I'm a huge anime fan, and there's so much anime that is influenced by Star Wars and vice versa. Star Wars has not only been influenced by like the old Japanese samurai films, but even now, like it takes a lot of inspiration from like modern anime styles. And in Star Wars animation, you see a lot of these character quirks that visually you can tie back to how they're created in anime. And so like I think just at the end of the day, it's like if you want to make Star Wars' universe richer and bring in these space cultures and base them so closely on certain cultures, then you should bring in people from those cultures to make those space cultures even cooler and richer and like more exciting to look at, like pull from the source.
Yeah. Well, what do you think?
We need more diversity. That's that's
blanket.
If we're seeing Encanto where they added more diversity, and that's the magic that we get. Imagine when we just open the gates and just let new blood come in, let new creations come out. Like we will all, the more we learn from each other, the better we will become as society. So, and what better way than through storytelling? That's what we are. We are storytelling animals. We've come together every single time and make stories, and each time we make better versions of stories or more realistic stories. And so that's, the more stories we get exposed to, the more compassionate we become, the more we learn. So it's time to step aside and let others shine their stories and bring forth. So Star Wars, can definitely always benefit from just opening itself up. Like we saw, Visions was so beautifully stunning in all aspects. Like, and it felt like such a breath of fresh air, even if it's just the retelling of the same story. from a different lens and perspective, and
Mhm.
it's imagine if it's not only the retelling of the stories, but like retelling of that, like that Chilean mythology or a Taino mythology, or like let's bring into life all of those things that brought us to where we are now that we have the technology, the access, the we have like we can work from anywhere now. That's what COVID has taught us. So bring everybody in and bring them everybody together. Let's actually make things happen.
Yeah, I think inclusion is the most important part. It's not just the representation, because there's no point in like representing a group or having an actor or a group of people on screen if there isn't like the context and intentionality behind it. And as well intentioned as Jon Favreau might be with Book of Boba Fett, I think it's time for him to kind of step back a little bit from writing duties. I mean, and kind of have a round table of writers, because I
Yes.
think sometimes he does a banger of an episode, and other times kind of like you can tell that he needs people around him to kind of be like, hey bro, don't slaughter
Yeah.
indigenous people. That looks bad.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's one of the things that's said so routinely about George Lucas and the prequels is that, like, some of the decisions that people disagree with were just because nobody reeled George in and said,
Right,
wow, wait a second. Like, I love the prequels. Let me just proclaim that. I've done it 1,000 times in my life. I love prequels. I don't think there's anything wrong with the prequels, but some of the things that other people think are wrong with the prequels are just because no one really, in the original trilogy, George had like 1,000 producers who were like, we have your money.
Gary Kurtz at the back.
And yeah, exactly. And he also had like a wife who was editing his movie and was like, well, this kind of sucks. Let me
exactly.
all great creatives need great teams, because that brings in the perspectives that they're never going to have, no matter how good they are at doing what they do. So bringing in a wider team for the overall writing of or for individual episodes, especially for writing the Book of Boba Fett, is what would make it a lot more rich. And I'm sad that it doesn't look like that's happening, because it's just Jon Favreau and this other guy who has like worked with Jon Favreau a lot. So.
Yeah, and just one episode that Dave Filoni's going to do. That's basically it. So hopefully, more. Because the last thing, I mean, before we wrap up, that I was reading on the news about Lucasfilm is them losing Children of Blood and Bone, which was very I mean, I haven't read the book, but by everything I've read on, I need to get to it. I know I have a lot of books to get through. But everything I've read about the book, it seems like it's a wonderful, it's a wonderful story. And it's kind of disappointing to see the reason that Lucasfilm lost such a good opportunity for them to diversify their portfolio away from Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And it's because, once again, they're not managing expectations and they want to micromanage, which I did not understand, especially for this movie, since it's not like an original IP, why they would be against having the writer of the book participate in the screenplay. It's beyond me. So it's kind of like, it's a bad look for Lucasfilm to consistently be hitting a wall with like all these innovative creators, because they just are, for some reason, too precious about things, but then drop the ball with others. But those are just my thoughts about Children of Blood and Bone without knowing anything about the book.
Yeah.
But with that, I think we've talked a lot about Encanto. It's been a wonderful conversation, Catrina. Thank you so much again for joining us. We've had you once before. We've had you now. Hopefully, we keep having you as a guest in the future going forward. Where can people find you? We mentioned obviously you're on Twitter, but we know you're in lots of places, lots of podcasts. So why don't you tell us where listeners can find you? And you can drop links in the description below.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, both of you. I'm so excited to be back. Love the show. Super excited to talk about Encanto. And yeah, you guys can find me anywhere on the internet if you look for Catrina. That's OHCATRINA. My podcasts are Ito Banta Tambien, which I am working on with my good friend Kayla. PodroPascal, which is our, our breakdown of Pedro Pascal's filmography with my friend Rachel, and then a Fight Club Far, Far Away, where I break down all of the best battles in Star Wars, which is coming back this spring. There's also a bunch of other cool projects, so please follow me on social media. I promise I will talk about them soon.
Cool. And like I mentioned before, we're gonna definitely leave those links in the description below. So please make sure to check them out. Catrina's amazing, and she has some pretty good takes on Twitter. So please follow. You won't regret it. But with that, we have been Trial of the Force. Thank you so much for joining us on our first episode of season 3 and first episode of 2022. We thank you so much for having joined us in the last couple of years, and thank you for coming back in this new year and joining us in this new year. We hope that it's better than the previous ones. Again, thanks for listening to this Encanto chat. It's been an enchanted chat. It's been a wonderful chat. Thank you so much. You can find us everywhere as well. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just search Try It Out the Force and you'll find us. We have a TeePublic store where we have a couple of t-shirts and merch if you want to support us. I'll definitely appreciate it. Most of our designs don't have our name or logo in there, so you can support us without having to fly our colors. So everything's appreciated. If you like what we're doing, please leave a comment down below so we can engage in good and productive conversation. But with that, thank you so much. We have been Trial of the Force, and may the Force be with you.